So we're just days away from WrestleMania 41 at the time of this video coming out, so it's only appropriate I review yet another classic Mania here on the channel, my last one for the time being. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I looked at WrestleMania 22. I'd already looked at Mania 23 a couple of years back, Battle of the Billionaires, so let's see what the landscape of WWE is looking like now, 2 years after my last review. Try and stay with me on the chronology of the timeline, folks, as we examine WrestleMania 24 from March 30th, 2008 at the Citrus Bowl in Orlando, Florida. That, of course, would be the home of Mania 33 9 years later. And speaking of which, this is the sweatsuit that I got in commemoration of going to Orlando that year, so it's only appropriate I'm wearing it here for 24. This show was nominated by Matthew Magana, Liam Roberge, Sam Adelaide, Craig Thibodeau, Stephen Comer, Matthew Brady, Mysterio99, and Noah W. over on patreon.com/wrestlingwithregret. One of the most vivid memories I have about the build for this WrestleMania was when I actually went to New York City to do some touristy stuff. I think a week or two before that show, it was like during spring break, and in Times Square you could actually see the big advertising for it. I thought that was so cool to see it there. Also, every time I look at it, I can't help but laugh. I cannot get over the fact that WWE went into Photoshop and chiseled out Big Show's chest to make it look more muscular on the poster. Come on, guys. It looks pretty wet out there. Jim Ross on commentary calls it a porous Florida sky. Jim Ross and Jerry Lawler on the call for Raw. Michael Cole and Jonathan Coachman for SmackDown. And if you blink, you'll miss them, Joey Styles and Taz for ECW. More on them later. 74,635 is the attendance figure for this year's event. It earns just a bit more than 1 million pay-per-view buys, which that in and of itself is just a little bit down from the previous year's Mania at 1.2 million. You got John Legend performing America the Beautiful on the stage. Then you get the opening hype package. They say a lot can happen in a year. Twists, turns, the unforeseen, the unexpected, the unimaginable. And yes, 2007 in WWE was certainly full of twists and turns, both with and without the obvious reason for the Benoit scandal of being part of it. I mean, that would contribute to a lot of the craziness you would see on the tail end of 07, but also just at the beginning of the year, you had a lot of big injuries that would befall some of the bigger stars in the company. They're showing John Cena's injury, Edge cashing in Money in the Bank on an injured Undertaker to win the world title, Vince McMahon's challenge to Flair that he's got to keep winning, Chris Jericho's return, The Big Show's return, John Cena's return. I did really enjoy this hype package here. Sometimes I feel they really lay it on thick with the grandiosity and the spectacle and the ooh-ah nature of WrestleMania. But I think this year for 24, they did a really good job kind of finding that balance. You gotta love the Miami Beach aesthetic on a show taking place 3 hours north and inland from Miami. Your opening matchup is a Belfast Brawl as John Bradshaw Layfield takes on Fit Fabulous Finlay. If you want the full breakdown of how we even got to this point, like for all the details, you gotta go check out my Hornswoggle McMahon video that I did many years ago. But basically, you know, as a result of the Benoit fallout, storylines had to be changed and, had to be altered, and one thing leads to another. Hornswoggle is announced as Vince McMahon's illegitimate son, and all sorts of hijinks occur. But then after several months, Vince wants to really whip his son in a cage, and it's a really awkward scene there on Raw. But not to be outdone, JBL shows up and beats the crap out of Hornswoggle on top of that, and then later on reveals that Finlay is actually Hornswoggle's father, not Vince McMahon, and there's this whole thing of like, oh my God, the whole rest of the family has been conspiring against you, which like really never goes anywhere else beyond that, and nothing really notable that I can think of anyway. But the whole thing is now we get this Belfast Brawl with JBL and Finlay. It's essentially JBL's big blow-off to this storyline he's been involved in now, he's been roped into. You don't fight the boss in this one, Finlay, you're just fighting his heavy. Wow, this thing gets 2 separate recap packages during JBL's entrance. Finlay bringing out Hornswoggle. The little guy hadn't been seen since he got beat up in a hospital bed by JBL. What a sentence. JBL lays into Finlay from the get-go before the bell rings. Finlay comes back and immediately goes for the weapons, which instantly backfires. JBL just laying in some shots, some stiff-looking suckers in the corner. He grabs Finlay's shillelagh, but Hornswoggle provides a distraction that allows Finlay to fight back and crack JBL in the head with it. Everything here looks so snug. The table comes into play, but they avoid it for now. JBL powders and smacks Hornswoggle in the face. One of many times he's going to be abusing Hornswoggle in this match, which just causes Finlay to get into fatherly rage mode. He's like beating down on JBL after that. Goes for this big dive, but Jibbles intercepts him with a trash can lid in midair. What a bump by Finlay. JBL then hucks the trash can into Hornswoggle. All-time GIF moment there. Then he blasts Finlay with another one. Finlay fights back with the trash can lid shots. He throws Bradshaw into Chekhov's table, and on commentary they say, maybe that's his last supper. What? Finlay grabs some steps, looks to go for the kill, but JBL hits him in the legs with the kendo stick, the clothesline from hell, and JBL wins. JR saying, it was a bar fight, and it damn sure wasn't no happy hour. I remember watching it at the time in 08, and then as the show's going on, I'm thinking like, okay, it's all right, I guess, it's not what I expected. But boy, like watching this right from the get-go, I feel that my opinion of this show is going to increase dramatically from like where it was all those years ago. I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. This matchup, if you can't have a crazy like balls to the wall ladder match to start WrestleMania, then you might as well start out with a crazy, big, snug-looking brawl where everything just looks so impactful and amazing. Like the way that Finlay bumped for JBL here, and the way Hornswoggle gets involved, and of course that all-time moment of JBL hucking the trash can, Hornswoggle. It's great stuff. Again though, it feels weird that this is kinda it for Finlay. He's never going to get anywhere higher than this. He's not gonna like fight for any title shots. He's not gonna, he's not gonna fight Vince, like I said. He's just gonna kind of float around and have Hornswoggle by his side for the rest of his in-ring career. We're backstage. Guest hostess Kim Kardashian is there. She's very excited. It's kind of hard to believe that, she was on the upswing here and that her career would only get bigger and more lucrative as things would go on. I remember kind of watching this at the time going, who's Kim Kardashian? I don't get it. Of course, now she's like one of the biggest names in media and entertainment. She's talking about Money in the Bank when last year's winner, Mr. Kennedy, walks in and shouts that he'll be the first person to win 2 consecutive Mr. Money in the Banks. Well, somebody's going to do that soon, but not you. Kim is very entertained by this, and we go to that ladder match now. You've got Carlito, Shelton Benjamin, CM Punk, Mr. Kennedy, one half of the tag team champions John Morrison, U.S. champion MVP, and Intercontinental Champion Chris Jericho. Wow, those are 3 titles you will not see defended tonight, and they won't be the last. One thing I noticed right away was that everyone's mics were open for commentary on this one. That's not going to be confusing or chaotic in any way to have 6 guys fighting for time. You got Kennedy making his entrance, running under 2 ladders on his way to the ring. I would say, oh no, but then again, we all know the previous year was his worst year of luck. Then you have Chris Jericho, who's in the midst of his first big comeback in WWE. He returned to the company in the fall of the previous year after like a 2.5 or 3 year hiatus, and went right away to challenging Randy Orton for the championship and feuded with JBL. And now, since then, he has become the first ever 8-time Intercontinental Champion, so he sets the record there. And now he's in a big multi-man ladder match, not defending the championship. But at least we know that 2008 will be a lot better for Jericho after this point. Jericho and MVP do some ladder jousting. Morrison grabs a ladder and does this moonsault off the top. Oh my God, the ladder going into business for itself as they fall. That looked like a nasty piece of business. I would have hated to be under that. Kennedy's almost got the briefcase, but what an arrival by Morrison. Shelton hits this insane sunset flip powerbomb to Kennedy as Morrison gets superplexed. Shelton tries a ladder stunt, but the ladder does not play along. They have to kind of kill time to get back to it. Carlito and Shelton work a little bit. Shelton climbs the ladder. Carlito and Kennedy tip the ladder over, and Shelty plummets through a ladder bridge. Great shot of Carlito looking shocked for a minute, but what a bump. More ladder tumbles. Jericho applies the ladder rantula on Morrison. Carlito and Punk both springboard onto opposite ladders, and Lawler says, "They're like Spider-Man!" Carlito with a backstabber to Jericho off the ladder. Jesus, look at how Carlito clips that bottom rope. MVP is inches away from victory when Matt frickin' Hardy shows up. The first time we'd seen him in months, when MVP took him out with injury, hitting a super twist of fate off the ladder. We get this very contrived ladder spot next where Jericho puts one into another, creating this weird lever thing. Morrison tries to climb up it. It doesn't work. It just looks silly here. Carlito spits the apple into Jericho's face to get him off the ladder. Kennedy shoves Lito off and into another ladder. Then Punk decks Kennedy. Jericho with the code breaker. Punk and Chris fight atop the ladder. Punk pulling Jericho's leg through the rungs. Y2J is Y2 stuck as Punk grabs the briefcase and wins the first of his 2 Money in the Bank ladder matches. I also give this match 4 stars, and if you can't open WrestleMania with a big crazy ladder match, you might as well have it go on next. But this was just a great, chaotic multi-man. I think they're really starting to kind of get the idea of what Money in the Bank is and how you can build up a match like that. You know, plenty of thrills and spills, a big return in the middle as well that got people really hyped up. And yeah, it's a great pre-coronation, so to speak, of CM Punk. Like I mentioned, he's gonna win, Money in the Bank the following year. He is gonna win the World Championship off this Money in the Bank victory a little later in the year. So this is all before things really change for his career trajectory, and he becomes more of that main event top guy. John Cena is backstage getting his gear on. Randy Orton looking at his title. Triple H deep in thought. Then it's time for a Hall of Fame recap, and we welcome the class of 2008. The Briscoe brothers, Jack and Jerry. Gordon Soley's family. You have Rocky Johnson, High Chief Peter Maivia's family. Eddie Graham, represented by his son Mike Graham. Mae Young, and then you have Ric Flair's kids standing in for him. You got Ashley, aka Charlotte, Megan, David, and Reed, and all I could think of by the end of this was, my God, what a depressing stage this is, because so many people on this stage are either representing people who are dead or they're gonna be dead themselves soon. And that's pretty sad and dark, but that is what I thought of when I saw that. But I think just looking at this class, it was a really interesting group because it's all stuff from pre-WCW or early WCW days. You got people like, Eddie Graham, and you've got the Briscoes, and you've got Gordon Soley. This very specific era, this very specific part of the U.S. wrestling history, and I think that's really neat. This definitely feels like a lot of these are like Jim Ross calls, is what I feel a lot of these picks are here. And then of course you have Ric Flair going in as a Hall of Famer, and it was the first time that an active wrestler had been inducted into the Hall of Fame, and it was a big, kind of a red flag that his career is going to end on this show, but we'll talk about all that when we get to it. Then we go backstage to see Todd Grisham with the MC for Bunnymania, Snoop Dogg. He's a future Hall of Famer himself. He's excited to be there, and he says he's met someone who he sees eye to eye with. It's Festus of the hilarious new tag team on SmackDown, Jesse and Festus. He says they're like peas in a pod, but in comes Santino Marella, who calls him Snoopy the dog. Santino tells Snoop he'll be there at the Bunnymania, so don't try any funny business. Then Snoop just kind of calmly grabs a ring bell and dings it to wake up Festus. That was his special quirk, by the way. And then Todd's like, "Where'd you get that bell?" And he says he got the hookup from Mick Foley. Bizzle bizzle, ow, have mizzle, have a nice dizzle, walk a whizzle. Up next, it's the Raw vs. SmackDown battle for brand supremacy as SmackDown's Batista takes on Raw's Umaga, aka Who Gives a Fuck. Honestly, this is an insult to both Batista and Umaga. This is the best you could have come up with for them. I know that there were changes to the card. I know shit happened, all right? But I feel you could do something better for either of these guys than just some no heat having, no real build having kind of match. Ooh, brand supremacy. Ooh, how are we going to build that up? Well, let's have Batista win a lot of matches. Let's have Umaga win a lot of matches. And then we're going to have these two guys fight. And that's it. Fighting for something we still don't even know what brand supremacy really means. Is a brand going to get something out of this? No? Then what the fuck are we doing here? Batista gets a big old pyro display for his entrance. You have Cole and Lawler on the call for this match now. Wow, these commentary assignments just feel like they're changing up and just getting weirder every single match. Umaga's wearing the black and orange on this night. Nobody tell Taz. You got William Regal, the Raw GM, sitting at ringside. Why not him and assistant GM Teddy Long as well? They say he's there, but I don't see him. Umaga kicks Batista in the face a couple of times and tries to work over his back. I just noticed for the first time some guys on the hard cam dressed like the Spirit Squad. I popped for that. You got this big contingent of fans on the hard cam side, like actively cheering for Umaga in this thing. It might be the noisiest the crowd gets all match. Bats can't get a good offense going because his back is so sore. Umaga continues the assault. He goes for the thumb of death, but Batista blocks it, drops Umaga into the ring post and hits the spine buster. He hits the ugliest powerbomb I'd ever seen for a guy whose finisher is the powerbomb, gets the cover and the win. I'm going to give it 1 star out of 5. I couldn't have cared less about this match, and I'm pretty sure neither could the guys actually in it. The story here was just Batista got his ass kicked all match, made like the simplest, quickest comeback, and that was all she wrote. Again, it feels insulting that this is the best you can have for these two guys, is to throw them together on a match with the lightest of pretenses. We go to the Floyd Mayweather bus. You see everyone showing off their watches and chains. Then we get a tail of the tape for the Mayweather Big Show match, and we see that Show has got a shoe size of 18E. So earlier in the night, they had a battle royal to crown a #1 contender for the ECW title match later on in the evening, and Kane Dunn won it, and so we go to that match now. You've got ECW General Manager Armando Estrada doing the ring introductions. You have Joey Styles and Taz doing commentary for the matchup. The first time that the ECW Championship had been defended at a WrestleMania. Oh my God, isn't that just, what an arrival, what a vindication for Extreme Championship Wrestling. And the time it's taken me to say all that, the match already fucking ended. Kane came in from behind, chokeslammed Chavo Guerrero, and that's the story. At least Kane won another world title. Good for him. I'm gonna give it 0 stars out of 5. Man, they really don't like ECW. I can't believe that they got Taz and Joey Styles to sit out there all show and be on assignment for count 'em, one match, and it's like 10 seconds long. Unreal. We have Raven Simone in the ring talking about some Make-A-Wish kids. 50 wishes granted at one time this evening. Very cool. Jerry Lawler says, "I'm a huge Raven Simone fan." No, you're not. It's time now for the career-threatening match, aka one of the only things about this show anyone really cared about, as Ric Flair takes on Shawn Michaels. And what a story we have built up to get to this point. It was a few months ago, the previous year, where Vince McMahon told Ric Flair, "Hey pal, next match you lose is going to be your last." And so begins this big retirement storyline, this retirement tour for the Nature Boy. You know, every match is a must-win. Every match is this going to be the last match of his career? And so they did a good job, some months better than others, building up the tension and the risk involved. And then finally, when Flair is announced as the headliner for the Hall of Fame class, Flair comes out and he tells Shawn Michaels, he challenges him to a matchup at WrestleMania. It's like, hey, you know, like, I'm the best, you're the best, let's have a WrestleMania style match at WrestleMania. And Shawn's like, well, gosh, I don't want to be the one to retire Ric Flair. And Flair gets all pissed about it. And it's like, well, wait a minute, why do you think you're going to retire me? Like, why do you think I'm just, you know, some charity case or whatever? And, you know, Shawn brings up Old Yeller, and that makes Flair go nuts, slaps Shawn in the face. Like, I'm not Old Yeller, motherfucker. Like, let's go. I'm like, yeah, I'm feeling really good. And like, this was a great way to build this final matchup. You know, it's face versus face. It's one of those ones where you kind of see the writing on the wall and you know where it's going to go. But man, how are we going to get there? How are we going to get to that journey? And I love like the hesitance in Shawn Michaels' character initially at this, and then by the end he's fully in, like, I'm going to give you everything I have, you know, we're going to prove like why I'm the showstopper, and I'm going to stop your show, but you're still the Nature Boy. So this was all very well done. Mike Adamle welcomes Ric Flair to the promo zone, and he goes, with so much to lose, with a 35-year career on the line, what's your game plan? And Flair goes, my game plan? To be the man. Well, that's it. Ooh, look at all those O's in the crowd. We are in the midst of the let's see how many fluid ounces worth of tears we can extract from Ric Flair in one weekend between the Hall of Fame induction ceremony the previous night, and then of course this show, and then what's going to happen on Raw the following night. Man, you are never going to see Ric Flair cry more in your life than on this weekend of 2008. Charles Robinson, Little Nate, of course, is the referee for this one. They start out with some fundamentals, brother, and Flair goes, "Old Yeller, huh?" Shawn slaps his face and draws first blood, brother. This time, Flair is the one who stops the Beal. Then he gets his own dive off. It worked. Shawn kicks Flair out of the ring, goes for the moonsault, but all he gets is a tum-tum full of announce table. Ugh, that landing looked really brutal. And my favorite part about that is that the announce table, that's the Raw announce table, that's busted the whole rest of the night. Lawler and JR have to sit there with no desk for the rest of the evening. Couldn't Taz and Joey just loan them their table? They're not going to use it the rest of the evening. Lawler talks about that old reference Yeller that made Flair so upset. His words, not mine. Shawn backdrops Flair to the outside. There's a moonsault that Flair barely catches. Is this what Shawn's teaching the kids at the Performance Center? They're trading chops. HBK hits the forearm, gets a few of his big moves off. Shawn hits the big elbow drop. He tunes up the band, but he can't put Flair away. Rick takes advantage by putting on the figure four, which he had just beaten the WWE champion Randy Orton with on Raw the previous week, clean as a whistle. They try the bridge up spot. They can't quite pull it off. Flair gets the figure four back on. Shawn fights for the ropes. Flair with some strutting. He walks right into Sweet Chin Music, and both men are down. Flair distracts the ref while he takes Shawn to Dick Kick City. Michaels does some kind of weird version of the figure four. It's like he puts himself in a knee bar or something. This is some great emotion here. These guys are just throwing attacks back and forth. They are exhausted. Flair throwing plenty of chops, but takes another super kick. Shawn gets back into the corner, and here we get that immortal line, "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn." Super kick, the cover, the win for Shawn. Flair is crying. Shawn gives him a thank you and a smooch. Flair gets a very emotional standing ovation. I'm going to give it 4 stars out of 5. This is not the best Ric Flair match you'll ever see. It's not the best Shawn Michaels match you'll ever see. But I think that with the story told, this was a fantastic blow-off to that build. And I think that these guys do have a good chemistry with each other. Again, not everything looked 100% perfect, but again, the emotion was there. The moments in between the moves were there. And I think that is something that those two really nailed on this one. It would kind of begin the whole thing that Shawn and Triple H are so known for with NXT, with when they were running it, they're just, the drama and the emotion, and it's I just can't help but think the seeds are being planted for all of Gargano and Ciampa's shit happening in the next several years of the future for NXT, the way they kind of directed that stuff. It's I'm sorry, I love you. It's a great moment, admittedly, in that moment, in that context, fantastic. And so I think that's just another great part of that very beautiful story. It is a shame that Flair would undo this amazing retirement angle so many different times over the next few years, whether it was in Australia or TNA or in Nashville, I guess, which is also technically a version of TNA. But it was, this was a very cool moment. And watching it live and seeing it all unfold, the way they kind of treated Flair's career in the build to it, very much felt like a goodbye, kind of a foregone conclusion, and you kind of knew it was coming, but again, the way they pulled it off was just very, very well done. Todd Grisham's in the promo zone with the world champion Edge. He says, "We've seen history made and we'll see more history tonight," basically echoing what Todd had just said before he walked in. He takes us back to Wrestlemania 6, when he was a young boy sitting in the audience and experiencing his innocence being destroyed when the Ultimate Warrior beat Hulk Hogan for the championship, and how he never forgot that, and now what he wants to do as an adult is kind of be that for the young kids watching in attendance tonight. He wants some little kid who's a big fan of The Undertaker to have their dreams shattered and their innocence broken by Edge beating the dead man and breaking the streak. I thought this was a really, really good promo. Then they say that we're only halfway through the show, and I'm like, holy shit, are we really only halfway through? And then it's wake up, bitch, pyro time. So how do you follow up something so emotional and dramatic, this high point that we just experienced with the career-ending match for Ric Flair? Why, the only way the Nature Boy would want, of course, with some titties. It's time for the Bunnymania Lumberjack match, as Ashley Massaro and Maria Kanellis, the previous year and this year's Playboy cover models, versus women's champion Beth Phoenix and Melina. Once again, another belt you will not see on the line tonight. Complete with your master of ceremonies, future 1-0 at WrestleMania, Snoop Dogg, rolling down the ramp in the Snoopmobile with the other divas following him. Snoop has to read every single word he says from a card, and the heel ladies are accompanied by Santino Marella, the bitter ex-boyfriend of Maria who got mad when she posed for Playboy. Yes, it's the Eddie Guerrero China storyline from 2000 all over again, only sillier. There's actually a lot of stuff happening in this match. Ashley pulling off a Hurricane Rana early on, Maria hitting the Bronco Buster, Ashley doing this big face buster to Melina out of the corner from like a monkey flip position. But the heels get the cut off, and then the heel ladies attack her on the outside. Beth and Melina with some double teaming, Melina with a moonsault off of Beth's shoulders. Partway through, the lights cut off. I think that they were trying to transition to the more nighttime lighting setup for the stadium, but they just didn't do a very smooth transition because the lights all cut off and they had to get some spotlights on the ring. Beth goes for the glam slam, but Maria's able to counter out of it. Beth accidentally checking Melina into the heel side, Ashley diving onto them. The Lumberjills are fighting. Santino breaks up a pinfall by Maria. Jerry Lawler, champion of women everywhere, decks Santino. Beth ends up hitting a fisherman's suplex to win. But then after the bell, Snoop hits Santino, then he kisses Maria out of nowhere, which I don't know, it's kind of cringe. Did a writer suggest he do that? I give it 1.5 stars out of 5. That's right, I ranked it higher than Batista Umaga. I mean, it was okay. They gave it their all here, and I do like that Ashley and Maria would keep improving as performers the longer they were there with the company. And so, yeah, I mean, they did their best given the circumstances. It's the lingerie pillow fight or whatever from 22 all over again. Up next for the WWE Championship, Randy Orton defends against John Cena and Triple H. Triple H and Cena had each bounced back from big injuries the previous year. Orton tore his pec and Triple H tore his other quad muscle, and then they each came back at different times. John Cena came back, of course, as a surprise entrant in that year's Royal Rumble. He wins the match, but he couldn't wait until WrestleMania to cash in that opportunity. So he decided, let's do it next month at No Way Out. Yeah, baby! But then, Orton gets himself disqualified by slapping the referee, which is hilarious. But Cena does beat Orton in a match on Raw a few weeks later to get added to the Mania match. Also at No Way Out, Triple H wins the chamber match to become the #1 contender, and we are in the thinned out, straight hair babyface era for Triple H, and he's just too cool for school. He's the same kind of character he's always been, but now he does it for yucks. And then there's Randy Orton. Good old Randy Orton, WWE champion. Yep, that's him there, just being the champion. Kind of like he was at Mania 30. I wish he was more interesting as a defending champion. I'm sorry. We get a big college marching band playing Cena out to the ring, which is neat. Here are the results of this online poll we asked you about earlier. Nobody thinks Orton is winning. There's no silly king costume for the H-Man this year, but he does have his working tan on, brother. All three guys getting in shots in the beginning. Cena almost gets both guys up for a double AA early on. Orton with a double Garvin stomp. Loved that. Cena showing some of that big boy strength again. Orton manages to drop both guys at once with a draping DDT. Goes for his KO on Cena, but John blocks it and just drops Orton onto Triple H. I like that. Cena goes on this big run, which gets a mixed reaction from the crowd, but he gets driven into the ring post by Orton. Randy gets the RKO off on H, but then Cena catches him in the STF for a while. A lot of coming and going in this matchup. Cena's got the submission back in on Orton. Triple H breaks it up and gets Cena in the crossface. He fights to grab the ropes, which gets booed by a lot of the crowd here. We get the yay boos with Triple H and Cena. Cena mounts his comeback. He blocks the pedigree. After trading more finisher attempts, Triple H hits the pedigree, but Orton punts the game, covers Cena, wins the match, and retains to the shock of the crowd. I give it 3 stars out of 5. This match was just okay to me. I don't really have any complaints about it, but it wasn't a fantastic match either. And in fact, a lot of matches after Flair and Michaels really suffer because they're not Flair versus Michaels. And I think, the build for this match seemed really reminiscent of the way they got Rey Mysterio out and then in to the championship match at Mania 22. So, kind of a very much derivative feeling when watching this build. But again, the match was just fine for what it was. Well, up next, the world's greatest fighter takes on the world's largest athlete as Floyd Money Mayweather, the boxer, takes on the Big Show. So, crazy story to start off 2008, because after being gone for more than a year from the company, last time we saw Big Show in WWE was at December to Dismember 2006. He drops the ECW belt to Bobby Lashley. He's just really got big health issues. He's huge. He looks totally out of shape, like he's gonna keel over every match he's in. So he's gone for a long time. His contract expired. He's exploring his options. He says, "Oh, the Big Show's my slave name. I don't want to be called that anymore." And he actually is a last-minute replacement to wrestle Hulk Hogan, because there was supposed to be this independent match in Memphis where it was Hogan versus Lawler, and WWE pulled Lawler out of the match, and so the Big Show, or Paul the Great White, actually replaced him in that match. And that was really the only thing of note that he seemed to do during that hiatus. But then at No Way Out back in February, to a big surprise, he returns being really slimmed out, the smallest he'd been in a very long time. And so during that segment, he calls out Floyd Mayweather sitting in the front row of the crowd. He gets down on one knee, gets punched in the face, and his nose is broken. And that causes a whole bunch of, headlines and news bits, whatnot, a lot of that sweet mainstream exposure for the WWE. And so Mayweather is the current WBC welterweight boxing champion. He is allegedly being paid $20 million for this matchup. I do remember that this, I think, is the storyline where Big Show develops the WMD, the big right hook, as his finisher, because he's trying to, be like Mayweather, the boxer, and whatnot. The build for this was so interesting because, right away, they were painting Big Show heel, Floyd Mayweather face. But the reality of the situation is Mayweather, bit of a controversial fighter, even back then. And so not everybody was riding the babyface Mayweather train. And so eventually it just kind of became switched that they were both heel, or like Big Show he almost was booked more like a face by the end, because they were saying, Floyd's taking all this money, he's this, he's that. And all Mayweather can really say is like, "Oh, I broke your nose last time, I'm gonna break your jaw." Like, he says that like 800 times in one segment, where he's like yelling at the Big Show while Show is beating up this like job guy who's like a boxer the size of Mayweather. And Jesus, I'll never forget this, the way he picks up this poor kid, Big Show, and just drops him onto the floor from the ring, and just the way he plops and just thuds on the floor like that was so disgusting. And of course, to make up for the fact that Floyd Mayweather cannot wrestle and can't really do much with the Big Show here in terms of a match, they make it no holds barred, anything goes, and the only way you could win is by pinfall, submission, or knockout, which I'm pretty sure that's actually 3 ways to win. Mayweather comes out with his posse in his obscenely large leather and mink shorts. He manages to outmaneuver Show early on, hitting some body shots in the corner. Show keeps swinging just above Mayweather. Like, come on, he's right there. Floyd taking a sip from his fancy chalice. Show blasts his helper off the apron. Show finally gets his hands on Mayweather, but Floyd gets on top and applies the sleeper. Show shakes him off, stomps on Floyd's hand. He lights up his opponent with the chop, and Floyd, to his credit, sells everything here like death. One of my favorite parts of this matchup is one of his guys on the outside is shouting, "He can't do that! He can't do that!" Show is all over Floyd now, standing on him, slamming him, dropping the elbow. Fans are definitely on Big Show's side here. Mayweather's crew tries to take him out, but Big Show's having none of it. He's fighting them all off. And after that happens, Floyd hits him repeatedly with the chair. He grabs the brass knuckles off his own guy and cleans Big Show's clock with it, wins the match by knockout. I give it 3.5 stars out of 5. I said back then, and I felt this way for a very long time, this was one of the best outsider involvement matches in WWE history. You think about some of the celebrities you had before Mayweather getting involved in matches, and even a little bit after that, the expectations were very low for a wrestler going against someone who is not a wrestler and who is not trained. So how do you tell that story? How do you make it entertaining? And this was a very entertaining matchup. It was such a spectacle. Like, this is how the Big Show should be used. Honestly, these kind of like attraction matches. The face-heel dynamic thing, that was what it was, but I think that they still delivered a great story. Like I said, Mayweather sold his ass off for some of that offense. That was great. I think he definitely kind of earned his keep in that story in the match there. They put just enough bells and whistles and smoke and mirrors and everything to make it feasible that Floyd could fight back and defeat Show. And yeah, it was just a great story. You have that size difference. You can't look away from something like that. And so I think that was a really good use, interesting use for Big Show. From the comeback from the company after all this time gone, and he immediately, loses his first high-profile match. But again, this is one that's going to be known more of just like the attraction. It doesn't really hurt him to lose so much because he did get beat up by a bunch of guys. He did get hit in the face with brass knuckles by a very powerful boxer. So it's, one of those ways you can kind of excuse it, and it is just known more as a positive for Show. Even though he lost the match and even though, they photoshopped pecs onto his chest for the poster, it still was a very impressive spectacle. Kim Kardashian's here to announce the attendance record, and then in our main event, former Ministry members collide as Edge defends the World Heavyweight Championship against The Undertaker. Edge has been a thorn in The Undertaker's side ever since last year. As I explained in my Mr. Kennedy video, Edge beat Kennedy for the Money in the Bank briefcase and used it to cash in on a wounded Undertaker to become the new world champion. It was a crazy, matter of circumstances to get into this place, kind of like stopgap creatively. Taker comes back from injury, wins the championship opportunity by winning Elimination Chamber in February, and Edge has vowed he wants to kill the streak. Both men have never lost at WrestleMania. Taker's never beaten Edge, and so that also adds a lot of intrigue to this. I also think it's the first time we've heard Coach all night on commentary. The Undertaker looks strong at first, the boop boops in the corner, the old school attempt, but Edge stops it. Edge is able to get Undertaker outside the ring, hits this big baseball slide, kind of a rough looking neck breaker over the top rope. And speaking of rough, Edge goes up top, Taker just shoves him to the ground in this hard landing. Taker follows up with a big dive to the outside. Edge is able to fight back, dumping Undertaker over the barricade into the front row. He starts to work over the Undertaker's leg with a version of the half crab. Challenger's back up to his feet. They're trading strikes. Some really great back and forth in this matchup, by the way. Edge, the story here is he's finding all these different ways to stop the Undertaker's momentum. No one has really been this good at stopping the Undertaker and cutting off, comeback attempt after comeback attempt. And they're really, showing you that Taker's looking a little dazed here. But the Goozles countered into the DDT. Taker ends up getting the choke slam and we get a kick out. The Last Ride is countered into a neck breaker. Taker ends up hitting the Last Ride. After all, Undertaker keeps fighting. The referee's taken out. Taker with another Goozle, but is taken to Dick Kick City. Edge grabs a ringside camera and just like he did at Survivor Series, he dinks Taker with it. The referee falls out of the ring. Oopsie! Edge goes for a tombstone, but Taker counters with one of his own. He's got the match won, but then in comes Charles Robinson with the Call of the Warrior! Sprinting down the ramp to come in, but he cannot count the 3 in time. What an all-time moment there. In come the Edge heads, Hawkins and Ryder. Taker fights them off, chokeslams one onto the other. Oof. Edge with the spear, we get a kick out. He hits another one, but Taker catching Edge's hand into the Hell's Gate. Edge fights it, but taps out. New champion. The streak continues to 16-0. And hey, isn't this the show where like 45 people got hurt from the pyro at the end? Yes, it is. I give it 4.5 stars out of 5. What a way to end a WrestleMania. What a way to, what a great chapter in this feud. It's not very often you get such a highly competitive match from The Undertaker at this time. You consider especially his last couple of Mania opponents, and he hasn't had those Shawn Michaels matches yet. We're not there to the point where it's like, oh my God, workhorse Taker at Mania. This is kind of this is a great example of that kind of matchup. But boy, what a great back and forth. What a great story. Edge looking as strong as he possibly could, despite losing the match. And yeah, definitely not going to be any skin off Edge's nose because he's going to continue to dominate SmackDown for, a little while longer until his retirement. But he's definitely still an all-time match for both men. So my final grade for WrestleMania 24 is a B+. This show is a lot better and more exciting than I remember it being in 2008. I think it's because, watching it back then, after that the emotional high of the Flair-Shawn Michaels match, everything else kind of feels tepid to me. Like, I didn't care about any of those storylines in comparison to Flair-Michaels during that. And so watching it back here, you kind of see more of the matches for what they are, and I can appreciate them a lot more. It's like one dud for every couple of classics on here. But yeah, only one matchup where I was like really truly invested. Other couple of things you can take away from, like Show and Mayweather and Edge versus Undertaker, obviously. But yeah, like I said, way less boring than I remember it being the first time. So there's that. But what did you think of Mania 24, and how about this review? Let me know in the comment section below. And next time, we are going to be bringing Hulkamania back a smidgen early as I take a look at WCW Uncensored 1995. Be sure to give the video a thumbs up if you like it, subscribe to Wrestling with Regret, and hit that bell icon for all the notifications. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.